everyone, and welcome to the Punisher Season 2 Spoilercast. I'm Captain Logan. And I'm Vince. Vince is back to talk to me about Season 2 Punisher. Vince, I watched this show a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, you watched this show?
I did. Well, I figured if I was going to be on this video. Oh, did you not? Okay, well, I don't know why you're here. Vince is here to check my facts about, like, comic Punisher. Where it's just like, there's like, no, now, the person that... The person that you're talking about sounds like a comic Punisher character, so let me tell you what they're really supposed to be like. But anyway, so I use the word spoilercast sort of loosely because very often we get really super in-depth in these, and this might go pretty in-depth, but we're going to do our best. But it's been a little while, and this show did not stick with me great.
You know,
I don't know if you're having that.
It's, I didn't feel like it was terrible, but I feel like
No,
a lot
me
of
neither.
it's a little more forgettable than the first season. But, I mean, there's some things that stick out in my mind.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I guess.
And we'll get into it. I think, I don't know, if we have to compare them, I think, this is weird. The first season is technically a better told story and a more cohesive narrative, probably.
I would agree with that.
It's a little bit less meandery, and it doesn't have the problem that it seems like all of these ended up having at some point. And we should probably acknowledge that, of course, this is all canceled now, and that we're reviewing a thing that's totally finished, and kind of ridiculous that not only did it not get announced to be canceled until it was out a few weeks, but some people, including the producers, were kind of pipe dream holding out hope that it would somehow get renewed. I'm like, no, Daredevil's done. You guys are crazy. That's not going to happen.
Oh, yeah. Like, I thought it was possible that they might do it, like, if they had everything in place, they just hadn't actually started shooting, then maybe they would have gone through with a Season 3, but there was no hope for a Season 4. It was like zero. So
there was still no hope for Season 3 because Daredevil got canceled while they were still in post-production on this and shooting Jessica Jones. Like, when they say, like, oh, we're all ready to go, like, as much as the Daredevil people were, like, yeah, they got, like, notes and storyboards and stuff, just like Daredevil did. Like,
well, you know, I wondered, like, I guess in my mind it kind of depended on whether or not they had alternate plans for these things once everything's canceled, and whether or not they actually cared that Punisher got to be a thing that operated separately. So, because I see that happen a lot where Punisher either gets forgotten or Punisher is intentionally left to the side.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
So right now we are jamming Frank Castle into a bunch of stuff in the comics like it's the 90s.
Yeah, I know, it's hilarious.
And I'm buying all of it, and I'm not happy with any of it.
It's probably driving you crazy because you collect all of it.
Oh,
some things never change!
So with Guardians of the Galaxy right now, I'm like, oh god, I'm buying this too? What the heck, man?
Oh, is he in that?
Yeah, well, it's sort of. Yeah. Cosmic Ghost Rider is Frank Castle.
I was going to ask you if you were buying Cosmic Ghost Rider.
I did. You know, I didn't hate Cosmic Ghost Rider.
It's fun.
It was.
I've only read a couple issues, but I think it's fun.
It's worth finishing.
Is it? Okay.
I'm not going to call it high art, but it is fun.
Well, no, but it's funny.
And the fact that anything that's about time travel, I don't know why, I just can't. The dude does not abide in this situation.
You can't get excited about it?
I just can't. Like, even if it's okay, unless it's Back to the Future. Like, if we're talking Back to the Future, then sure. But if we're talking time travel in general, it's just not my bag. But, I mean, I guess that's neither here nor there, other than being peripherally related to the Punisher.
Yeah, well, you know, we haven't talked in a while, and, you know, it has to do with the Punisher, whatever. You buy all that stuff.
Yeah. I buy a lot of it.
But anyway, so...
I eat all of it.
So back to, I guess, just comparing this to the first season.
You know,
yeah.
I guess it makes sense to me. I mean, I agree with the notion that the other one had more of a cohesive story, it had more of a distinct direction.
Oh, this is what I was going to say. The big problem that all of these eventually ended up having, and even Daredevil to a degree, though not as bad in the third season, is, and Eric talks about this all the time, is that there are shows that are supposed to be about a singular protagonist, but they very quickly become ensemble cast shows, and they'll run off with subplots that just aren't that interesting, just to pad it out, just to beef it out.
Yeah.
And like, there's a difference between a supporting cast where, you can still give character arcs, but it's a problem when it starts feeling like it's somebody else's show for a while, and you're not sure why you're even like having to bother watching this while it's not really informing what's going on with your protagonist that much. Like it's just slow burn where it takes too long. So by the time the story arcs finally converge, I don't care. This has that with the Madani stuff for me pretty hard.
Yeah,
but it's not
about Billy as
but
well.
it's not. Well, and those are so intertwined, right?
True.
But yeah, well, absolutely the Billy stuff. But the thing is, with Billy, that's an antagonist to your protagonist, and so it makes sense to have him have his own story that is the other side of of Frank Castle's story. Like, we weren't complaining about that with Kingpin in season 1. We spent a lot of time with him behind the scenes, apart from Matt Murdock. That's not a show that has an ensemble cast that forgets that it's like a main protagonist show. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's not the problem with that. But but it started feeling that way with him in this, right?
And I think the problem is that we essentially have 3 disjointed stories that all eventually come together. Well, sort of. I mean, I guess the whole corporate corruption and international espionage was completely separate from Billy. Billy had nothing to do with any of that stuff.
And real in the background, and I kept forgetting about it.
I didn't understand why. Like, that's the thing that bothered me, is that the season 1. I mean, talking about the symptom of the greater problem with all of the Marvel Netflix shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Season 1 was very much so. Anything that any other character did all came centrally back to how this affects our main character,
Yeah.
even if it's, one of the things I talked about in Wilmot's class, if I'm going back to the well in my
Way
mind,
back,
I guess,
yeah,
is like, even if the characters, if you have a single protagonist, if you have other characters on the screen, they effectively have to be talking about the protagonist, and so which isn't exactly.
And I don't go that far,
but everything has to relate back. And then you look over here at this, where it can be about Madani and Billy, it can be about Billy, and then it's about the Punisher having to deal with this completely separate plot line that is 100% separate from Madani and Billy, and the only thing that's connecting the Punisher to the rest of this is the fact that Madani is somehow aiding the Punisher.
Yeah, and doesn't it feel like there's this whole other show happening, and it keeps trying to find a way to rope the Punisher back into it?
Yeah.
To some degree. And that works in places, like, as far as, like, that works a little bit thematically in places where it's like, if the Punisher had just left well enough alone, and he stayed out of dive bars, he might have had an okay life once he was given his like free ride get out of jail card, right? Like,
yeah.
and he keeps finding ways and excuses to get roped back in, but it seems like the show forces that a little bit, where it's having a hard time keeping Punisher motivated. It's almost like keeping Punisher motivated as far as the Jigsaw stuff goes. So isn't it really weird that like Punisher's not really that interested in that stuff? He's a lot more interested in helping Amy and dealing with that. And yet, the Jigsaw stuff is always front and center and in our face, and I keep losing the other, like, B-villain plot, even though that's the one that the Punisher is kind of more interested in.
Yeah,
Am I wrong?
I think you and I are coming at the same issue from two sides of one coin here.
Yeah, sure.
Where, for me, the plot that was the major plot of the show was the essentially evangelical liars that are essentially corporate entities that are selling you a whole bunch of horrible stuff, but are using an image to sell it to you.
Okay, I get that, but when you just look at percentage of screen time, it's not there that much.
So,
and in the middle, it kind of totally loses it.
Yeah, and then at some point they're like, oh wait, we need to make sure that Punisher and Billy interact.
See, I don't feel like the show is ever really about that stuff. I feel like that's of course the central motivation for that villain plot, for that like crazy evangelical guy. But like that's just coming up with, really that's all just there so we can have somebody chasing Amy.
Yeah.
And yes, I said that so I could say chasing Amy. But
there's a guy. There's a thing that drove me nuts from first episode on.
But I feel like, because I was watching some of your Facebook posts about this show, and I feel like you kept picking up on thematic stuff that it never runs with.
Yeah, it's like all
Like
the stuff.
when you started talking about how they were putting the Russian stuff front and center, and you wanted something that was just escapist, and you were sick of everything having to talk about like the Russians meddling in elections and stuff. It's in one scene, and then never again. I can tell you wrote that after episode 6.
I did,
and then the rest of the show you wrote, oh, it never comes up again.
I went back because I watched the rest of it within the course of 2 days, and I went back and commented on it because there was a couple of people that were like, "Oh, is that all it's about? Then heck, I'm not going to watch it." Which I mean, I'm making them sound like they were. Oh my God! But they didn't have that much of a response. But anyway, I went back and commented and said, "Oh, they never actually came back to that. It became strictly about corporate corruption and Billy. Like, so you had Billy, and then the rest of this stuff was about corporate corruption, which I actually appreciated. So there's a theme there that I was like, no, I agree with this. This makes sense to me. But I think part of this stuff,
and it didn't. Besides that one scene, it never felt like it got to like. Politically pandery or anything like that.
Yeah, it was just the one scene. But they said something within that scene that I thought was very...
And I don't even know if I would call that pandery. It's just, it was on the nose enough that for a minute I was like, oh, is that what this is all going to be about?
Like not spy, but like crime novel writers, they just read the news and then they make a heightened version of it and then put that into something that they're writing. So, I mean, I've seen that a lot.
It's really easy to be hypersensitive and assume that if somebody brings up something that is happening right now, they must be making like a big grand statement about it.
Yeah, which, I mean...
And I don't think the show was doing that.
I think they were trying to do that in the comics, although it morphed into something different. And so I was extra sensitive to it, because I'm like, oh, they're doing it in the show, too!
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, not more than one episode worth of it. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing that's driving me nuts about this, somebody has to be chasing the girl, is Punisher is somebody who's prepared. A Punisher is somebody, and they've established this within the show.
A Punisher is just an archetype now. A Punisher is a man who...
The Punisher. He's, a Punisher is a person who punishes. I think we could make this definition.
All right, sure.
I put it into Microsoft Word, so it stopped correcting me that it's not a word. And the thing that drives me nuts about this is that Punisher gets into this whole situation because he happens to be at a bar where there is a girl who looks panicked. And I'm like, if it were about domestic violence in one episode, then okay, I understand. He happened upon somebody who needed him. But in the case of this international and corporate and political espionage, where he just happens upon it in this bar.
It's a little too easy.
I'm like,
that's the problem with it, yeah.
Why can't he be looking for stuff? Like, what? The whole thing about the Punisher is that he had a mission that he put himself on because something bad happened to him.
Okay, but... So, a couple of things with that. First of all, by asking for that, you're asking them to rewrite the ending of the last season. Well, that's not even true, really, because we don't really know what he's going off to do.
He could just choose to stay in New York, or he could...
That's true.
He could find something that he feels like he needs to investigate, which would bring him back to New York. We don't need Madani to go fly a helicopter in and pick him up.
Okay, but you do end up rewriting the story to the point where it loses what I loved about that first episode. If you change that, I actually like the idea that. And I feel like this is supposed to be the crux of the character arc for the season. I like the idea that Frank is trying, and I think kind of hoping against hope. I don't get the sense that he ever thinks he'll be able to do it. But this idea that he's like, not even really a normal life, but just, I'm going to lay low and I'm not going to get involved anymore. And then he stumbles upon this girl that he thinks that he could maybe have a life with and never thought that could happen. And if he never ended up finding Amy and he didn't get involved in all of that, he could have actually started a life with her, and then he could settle down. So and then they start making a really big deal, especially toward the end of the season, about the notion that the Punisher is who he is and doesn't have a choice to be anything else. And I think the idea is supposed to be that they either hasn't come to that yet, or is fighting it. I think it's more that like he's going against that because he has that get out of jail free card, and he maybe has a chance to not have to be perpetually involved and be like the force of nature character. And throughout the season, and that's the whole point of the very last scene, of course, is I'm just going to be the Punisher forever.
And I realize that. Wait, that's not the word I meant to use. I agree with you that that's exactly what they're trying to do with it. I also think that that's not what they should have done based on the first season.
Okay, go ahead.
Where he essentially he even has all of those. Now those are the scenes that I kind of think are melodramatic and should have been rewritten, but all of the things in his head where he's thinking about his wife. Now granted, it's in his head, so it's an idealized version of his wife. It's not that she was actually that way, and so I get that. But the whole thing with all of those moments where you had this this figurative representation in his head that eventually he had to accept that he was not the person that he wanted to be. That he has to be the guy that kills to avenge, or that punishes, essentially, to achieve an alternate means. He's because the one who's going to go to hell.
That can, and where he's like sacrificing his soul, essentially.
Exactly. So the first season's story arc, character arc, is about him accepting that he is a monster. And then we move forward to this one where he gets to think that maybe he doesn't have to be.
But the more I'm thinking about it, I don't know that it contradicts that. It's like, because again, he didn't think he was going to get with that girl. He's just traveling, right? And then he meets her, and they have a one night stand. It's all of like 2 or 3 hours. It's all a few hours.
Which I don't know if maybe I didn't have this thought to begin with, but now that I've seen the second season, I'm like, what crazy person would think that the thing that you're good at, the thing that you've recognized about yourself that you could leave behind, and secondly, why would Homeland Security wipe your record clean if you're that good of a killer? They think you're just going to drop off the map?
Well, that's a really good point.
Like this seems insane to me that they would say, "Here, go forth and be effectively witness protection," without just sending him to another country.
But they also know that they can't control him, so they probably wouldn't offer him a job or anything.
Yeah. Like,
which Madani does at the end of this.
Which, I mean, that's the point, which I thought was sage. I mean, I'm glad that he said, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Granted, Madani deciding that she's going to go field work elsewhere, like, you're not changing your job, you're doing it elsewhere.
She goes to work at the CIA,
Like this, which is funny to me, considering that the first season is essentially about the evils of the CIA and how...
That's a really good point, yeah.
I mean, granted, we also have to realize that the CIA...
And they're not playing her as damaged at the end. I feel like they're acting like she's, if not redeemed, like she's at least found like a center or something.
Yeah,
like her center is going to the CIA,
Like, you made the choice to join the organization that effectively killed Castle's family. And you just asked him to join it.
I didn't even think of that. And they could have said anything else. If they had said FBI, they're fine. Like, they could have said anything else.
Like, you know what? In my mind, she should have based
Black Ops anything. Like,
if I were them, I would have taken a significant, like, made her happy with a significant...
Or some other Black Ops thing. Just don't say CIA. Like,
what I would do, were I them, is she would have... I don't know if she would have to go to the academy. Maybe you have to. But, like, make her a sheriff. Make her small town. Because we just had that whole episode, which I think was terrific, actually. It's a lot like Assault on Precinct 13 if it were the Punisher.
Yeah.
But, which spoke to me in a lot of ways. So... we have this whole thing about these small-town cops and how they're effectively good people or largely untrained for it. And they don't have to deal with these bigger things. But even if they're capable, at least one of them has some kind of idea what's going to happen. Has to relearn things. But, blah, blah, blah. This is what Madani should have been working towards. Is that she gets out of this like inherently corrupt organization and move towards something that she doesn't have to have the stress where she... Now, granted, then the season 3 would essentially be about her realizing that she can't fit in here because she doesn't have enough control and she's like looking for conspiracies elsewhere, but...
Well, after all the trauma she went through here and, like... I'm being hyperbolic when I say this, but, like, constantly killing Jigsaw and his constantly coming back, right? Like, that... When she thought she killed him in the apartment, I did too, and then it's like, oh wait, there's another episode left, so he's got to be limping around somewhere.
Now that stuff I found fascinating, and I was like, why couldn't the whole season have been about this?
Oh really? I thought we were just stretching it along.
But
what I was going to say is, after all that trauma, I thought she'd go like open a donut shop or something. Like I thought she was done.
Like, I like the idea that she would still maintain a position of authority. I mean, I guess if you're the manager at a donut shop, technically that's authority, but it's a different kind. But,
Madani's coffee shop.
I love it. I feel like I should be able to create some kind of wordplay, but just nothing's coming to head. Madani's Donuts sounds good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Sure, why not?
But anyway, so
Duncan Madani.
So what did you like about that whole thing?
I like that we have the moment where we get to have Frank and Billy and their arc ends together. And the thing, I wish it would have been something that was more interconnected between Frank and Billy, because I really feel like even though they had that episode where we had the bank heist and we had the Punisher who essentially gets sicked upon them like a dog, but and that's, I don't like how disjointed it was. But if we have to have these two story arcs where we have corporate espionage and Billy and Madani that are essentially connected by Madani, if we have to have these two story arcs, I like how cold and how impersonal it was at the end, where it says something very distinct about Punisher's ideology, where he goes to meet Billy, and Billy, this is definitely Spoilercast, but he goes to meet Billy, and Billy's like, oh, you know, if it had to be somebody that I got to die with, I'm glad it was you. And then he tries to say something to him. Punisher just kills him.
Yeah, it's great.
He's like, I have no use for your words. You proved to me that you're a monster. I don't need to explain it to you. I don't need to explain it to myself. You're just not worth my time.
No, I like that scene a lot. It's great.
That whole thing, like, that for me was the payoff for the whole season, because we have these two completely disjointed.
Yeah, I think the part of the problem is structure and like, just coming up with excuses again to stretch out the jigsaw stuff so far that by the time we got there, I almost didn't care anymore. Like, that scene, like killing him like that had to wake me back up again. I wish, and I don't know, maybe the argument against this is that killing Billy the way he does reinforces so much who he is and where he decides to go at the end, that it has to happen where it does. But it feels to me too much like we've like outlined on a wall what scenes are supposed to happen when, and we're struggling to get to in a character motivated way to get there, or the actions of our characters to get us there, which is why we have so many scenes of Madani in the therapist where I just want to blow my brains out because I'm so bored. So in a perfect world, what I would have loved is just make them half seasons, make it basically to like where you've got the corporate espionage stuff in the background, and you either keep Billy in a coma until halfway through the season, and then wake him up and then do all that stuff, and then have him get killed at the end. Or let Punisher take him out in episode 7 or 8 and make us wonder what you're going to do for 5 more episodes, and then have a great story with the corporate espionage stuff. I think the problem is trying to resolve all that in a couple episodes at the end. Yeah,
I got really agitated by the notion that, well, especially based on the final episode, where
like do it the way we did Cottonmouth.
Oh heck, man!
In Luke Cage, right? Where like we took him out mid-season, and that was sort of a mistake there, I think, because I was so interested in him, and then the next guy I didn't completely buy his motivations, but structurally I think that would have maybe been the way to do this. Is like, you expect Jigsaw to be the villain for the whole season, we take him out halfway through, but then I hesitate to say that to a degree, because again I'm not totally sure that I'm not rewriting the character arc they're trying to tell. That's the only potential snafu in doing it that way. I think the question is, does that have to happen at the end?
I think that the problem is that Punisher is so far removed for so many of the episodes.
Yeah.
He's so far removed from the Billy storyline.
That's what I'm saying earlier.
In my mind, why are we taking the Punisher and putting him in a completely different plot line and making Madani the one that's obsessed? And I understand that Madani would be obsessed. That makes sense to me. I don't understand...
Well, yeah, they had that relationship, and she was upset she got duped, and all of that. Like,
I don't understand why the Punisher would feel that he could just go off and live his life separately from this person who he intentionally left alive. Like, why wouldn't you stay? Why wouldn't you stay and ensure? So then,
he sort of promised them he'd leave, right? Am I remembering that wrong? I didn't go back and rewatch that first season before the second, but...
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose you could argue that he's a man of his word and such, but
But you're saying he would just hide.
Yeah, like, why wouldn't you keep tabs? Or especially since, what's his face, Microchip's still alive. You could...
I was going to ask you if I was remembering that wrong, because there's never a mention of him in the entire season.
I'm pretty sure he goes back to his wife. Now, Please
maybe
comment and correct me.
or maybe that's the idea is that like, well, we weren't going to rope him back in because he actually gets his happy ending, and maybe we don't want to do anything to that. But
yeah, I mean, I suppose there's that.
But it's weird because if you know anything about Punisher, you're watching that whole season thinking that you're setting up a sidekick, and I'm not saying it's bad because it's not comic book. I'm just saying that it's counterintuitive, and I keep forgetting, like, do we not have him because we killed him, or do we not? I guess that's why. Because now that you're saying that,
I don't even remember the fate of Microchip in the comics.
Okay.
At this moment, I don't recall at all.
But anyway,
it's like there was some Punisher where he was there and some Punisher where he was not, and then I think they had something about what his fate was, and I don't recall at all.
I was expecting to see him again.
I wanted to.
He's a great actor.
What I would do with him is essentially just allow him to run some kind of information. You know, have him be the intelligence service for the Punisher, not necessarily doing the same thing that he did in the first season, which I think was inspired, but
yeah,
the making him the reason why Frank Castle gets to survive.
Let's not forget that the point of him was that, in some ways, or one of the points of him was that he still had a family and he was the one that could go home again.
Right. So why would the Punisher make him do that? But I feel like there should be.
I expected him to get roped in at some point, but not from the beginning. It would have been kind of weird if he had been like secretly working for the Punisher the whole time, or some such.
Or heck, maybe Castle even has a way to have somebody contact him. And he has informants within the police force or informants within the hospital. In my mind, Billy should have been a priority, and leaving the city should have been a lie. Like, I think it's okay to allow the Punisher to lie to Homeland Security.
Well, that's fair, because what did he think he was going to do if and when Billy woke up?
Yeah.
Also, let's just get into that for a little bit, because it's odd that we're 26 minutes in, and I honestly didn't know how long this would be and if we would have a whole lot to say, but it's all coming. So a lot of stuff's coming back to me now. It's weird that we're this far in and we haven't brought this up yet. I usually resist amnesia, and this was no exception. I also resisted amnesia here really hard as well. It felt like, once again, just a way to kind of to stretch things out with him, and also to kind of like manufacture sympathy from the audience, maybe.
Yeah. I think you're right.
And also to create a weird, like, metaphorical jigsaw that I don't think works at all.
When they kept saying, like, put the jigsaw back there, put the puzzle back together.
Gotta put the puzzle back together, yeah.
It was like,
it's hard not to roll my eyes at that. I liked some of the ideas they started with the questions about his identity, and like if they made the whole thing about him like not remembering so much that he could have become a better person, and then when and if the memories ever came back, he's got to reconcile that. That's interesting. But we didn't do that.
He seems like just a crazy person.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like a lot of the things that he does, they justify because he's crazy. Yeah, but he's not a fun or interesting crazy person. He's a really melodramatic crazy person.
Yeah.
That feels like he belongs in a CW superhero show before he belongs here, and the bringing in as his love interest, which, by the way, was the most callable thing in the world and took too long to get to.
Yeah.
That was when they start making out. I was like, is this a reveal? Am I supposed to be like surprised by this? Oh, okay. Like, everything, or a lot of the things about his scenes felt like just old school soap opera to me. Like,
yeah, that's the trouble. Like, you cannot use amnesia nowadays without people going soap opera.
You got to do something real different with it.
Yeah.
It can't feel like it can't feel like an excuse to not do like a more interesting character arc.
I feel like what they ought to have done is made him forget which parts of his life were his and which parts were Frank Castle's.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's better as the metaphorical jigsaw idea.
Because
like, the two lives are mixed together.
Because then you have all the pieces and you just got to figure out how to put them.
I feel like we could sit here and come up with 100 better ideas. It just feels like the reason they didn't start with amnesia and go, how do we make that interesting? It's like they started with amnesia because they just didn't have an idea. And it's like, well, we set up the character that a lot of people think of as Punisher's nemesis, and so he has to be the bad guy for season 2. So what do we do with that?
Which I'm okay with, and I really liked the idea that Madani would have been right, that he was just lying, that he knew who he was, he knew what he'd done, and he knew who the Punisher was, and yet, like, maybe
It's the same thing I had with with New Goblin in Spider-Man 3, where I wanted him to not have actual amnesia and just be lying the whole time, and then it turns out that no, he actually did have amnesia.
It was annoying to me when it became apparent that he actually had amnesia. You guys have this perfect out. That you have this man who is very good at lying and convinces everyone. And then you could have had a big moment between him and the psychiatrist where the psychiatrist realizes that she was full of crap the whole time.
And that would have actually...
she gets to decide whether or not she actually cares.
And that would have surprised me because what they did was the typical thing to do. What I was going to mention earlier when I said the CW thing is it didn't help that his psychiatrist and eventual love interest is... Maggie Sawyer from Supergirl, who I really don't like in that, and I really don't like her in this. I know you've probably not watched that, but she's not great.
I watched the first season and a half, I think.
She's in the second season.
I don't know how much... I didn't really care for it. I don't know. That was at the time where I was still in the throes of watching some of these other shows, and then I decided I didn't care about a lot of them.
So that was the girl that they had Alex dating to make a big deal out of She's a Lesbian.
I feel like
that's that. Anyway. That's who that actress is, and I thought she was just given not great material, and maybe the problem is she's not giving great material here either because she's not. But like I didn't like her here either.
She was overused. She was.
Yes.
I also think it was just another way to get Madani to be able to do more research and to let's give more lines to Madani and let's pad out some space for Madani and.
Well, and I thought all the stuff at the end with their pretending to be friends went on too long, too.
I wonder... This, this stuff got a little obnoxious.
The kind of verbal tete-a-tete where they kept feeling each other out and, like...
Yeah.
Sometimes these shows have this problem of, do you really need to be dramatizing the things you're dramatizing right now? Like, do I need to see these things happen, or can I just be told about them somewhere? Like...
Yes. Sometimes I feel like we inflate things where something should be a line of dialogue or should be apparent. Punisher, I figured this out. Like, we can have an entire movie about non-starts. Like, you watch the movie Heat, whereas essentially somebody intervenes at the last moment and it's about inaction, where somebody goes, oh, I guess we can't do that now. And then you have this movie where they go, or this movie, show, whatever. Go watch that on Netflix. Where else? Where everybody has to have this like artificially inserted action, which I guess is a very Bruckheimer thing to do. But I don't know where I'm going with this. We're out in circles.
I had this really weird experience watching this season because the first season I got 2 or 3 episodes in and was like, I think this is decent. I'm liking this okay. The writing's pretty good, and of course. The guy who plays Punisher is really good, with Bernthal. But I was never compelled to keep watching it for whatever reason.
The first season.
The first season, yeah. This season, but then by the end, I thought they told a really solid story. This season, I had the opposite, where I binged the first 6 episodes in like 2 days, where like I was really with it, and like it kept me interested, and I was surprised that I wanted to like the cliffhanger's really good, and I know this is later, but especially. There's that cliffhanger in 8 or 9 that's just killer, and I'm like, okay, I can't help but keep watching this, but the story was not ultimately as good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because nothing was connected. I mean, it all connected at the end, but when the first season was essentially
but it was a little clunky.
Everything had its through line, and it was all connected. One thing led into the next thing because somebody was driving it by making decisions. It was not reactionary. The whole corporate espionage thing is reactionary. The Punisher's not looking things up. Well, eventually he does, but the Punisher just stumbles upon most of this stuff, and Madani brings him in to deal with the Billy stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, why can't the Punisher just pay attention to the thing and then be connected to it, and it would have made everything so much better. But I guess the only thing in my head is that we would have had less time for Billy to work with the veterans. So we get this kind of interesting subplot about like both your help and your poison are coming from within the same community for you, or even from a multitude of communities. So we have victims who can make other victims aggressors. We have aggressors who can turn victims into aggressors. So And then essentially, how much help, and is all of the help that a veteran gets, is that a positive thing? Or can they be led astray somewhere or another? So
yeah, that's a good point. And Billy walking both worlds in order to in order to like get what he wants from them is a good idea. When he's taking advantage of people.
I
did think when he first started picking up guys, I thought it was really funny. It's like second or third episode where he stumbles upon some criminals and they're just like, we don't have a gang right now. Okay, we'll join the gang that you're just now starting. We need a gang. I thought that was hilarious.
It feels like that's something from oh heck, I don't know where I was going with that. Something about a TV show where, are you a gang? Yeah, we're a gang. Yeah, you can be in our gang. There's like with the Warriors, or maybe, you know, where it's a bunch of children making decisions. Well, they're not children; they're like teenagers, but you know, these haphazardly made choices. Now, then again, are we assuming too much when we can assume that these people can be taken advantage quite so easily by somebody like Billy? Not Billy Batson; it's a different dude.
Well, I mean,
Russo.
I mean, I think it helps that he's been through the same things they have, and he draws on that. I mean, I think that's supposed to be the idea, is that, like, I'm one of you, and...
Right. Like, why would one of us lie to one of us?
Yeah, except that... I don't know that that's brought enough to the fore sometimes. Like, it seems...
Yeah, I guess that's why I feel like we should have taken the... Now, granted, the corporate espionage thing has its interesting ideas in it. But I really feel like this should have been, based on how the show ends, and based on how Madani struggles, and based on what the first season was effectively about in regards to Billy, everything essentially comes back down to the guy at the bottom. Because Punisher, even though he was a guy who was, you know, the attack dog for the CIA and other groups or other entities, during the first show, you see all of the grand schemes of the bad guys, or the intelligence agencies, and then how it affects all of the guys at the bottom, and that's effectively what it's about. So you have this big through line that connects the veterans, and you connect all of the upper echelons of your military and your intelligence community. And then you look at this, where we completely disjoint it, where I'm like, well, if we focused more heavily on the guys at the bottom, it would have really given us a through line from the first season to the second season, other than the fact that we use the same characters to tell two different stories. And I can't disjoint that in my head. Now, I guess I keep saying corporate espionage. Let's talk about corporate espionage for a second. I like what the guy who's trying to blackmail people says, where he says, Mr. Castle, I'm paraphrasing, that eventually corporations, businesses will have more power than governments, and like, yeah, no, that makes so much sense. I mean, that's effectively what we're seeing in a lot of, well, I mean, there's a lot of even shows from the 70s and stuff. I mean, we have this through line where big business is inherently corrupt and corrupts other entities in its wake in order to achieve a grander means, or a grander scheme. And so I liked that.
Well, and we assume that the senator toward the end must be in cahoots because they're all corrupt.
Right, which I kind of appreciated that he wasn't. That he, even if he's
and I don't think that the show is like anti-corporation, but like all pro-government. I don't feel like that's what it's doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? If like some of that, I think, is just to not do the obvious thing, which I guess I appreciated. But also to say like, no, if one is bad, it doesn't mean that the other is perfect. Right. It's like power can corrupt on all sides. Like that's the point. And also, like it is his parents like manipulating him from the corporate side into the government side. Right. Saying that, well, like corporations and government sometimes even like unwillingly, subconsciously, like one side not even realizing what's going on, or can be in bed together.
The whole idea of the devil whispering in your ear.
That does, of course, speak to some like major present day things that are happening right now. But again, I don't feel like it's preachy about it. I feel like it just And it's in the background through most of it, and then comes up at the end. But I don't feel like anybody comes up and has like a big speech about it. So I appreciate that.
I like
that's just
that
the plot. That's just the story that we're telling, and it's not what I thought it was going to be. Like I did appreciate that the bad guy. Well, I assumed that Annette O'Toole was going to be a horrible, scary person just because of her hairdo, if nothing else.
She was a horrible.
The way they played her from the beginning. Now I thought she was just going to be like a psycho religious person, and it felt like. Then this is maybe a little bit typical where we just use the religion to justify the things we're doing already. I don't think they actually think that they're doing God's work. I think that they just speak those platitudes to justify what they're doing.
I don't think that they're crazy religious. I think they're essentially taking advantage of the people underneath them.
The guy they hired is.
Yes.
However, I think he buys a lot of the stuff that he's saying. But in comparing him to the Punisher, the way we do at the end, where the Punisher comes to. If not appreciate him, at least sympathize with him to some degree because because they're threatening his family. That should have been the motivation the whole way through. I thought. I thought like they should have they talked to him like he's almost an equal with them toward the beginning, and he's been doing all kinds of awful things for them.
Well, that's the thing I kind of liked, though.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we could disagree on that, but
sure.
That's the thing I kind of liked because effectively this guy's his faith starts to wane partway through, and when he realizes that he's doing things that are essentially leading him down this horrible path again, he starts to think, well, if I do this, this is a slippery slope, and then. Well, now the kids are being taken care of, and I think the big turning moment for him. I just don't
think his motivation is his family the entire time.
No, it's not. But I think
you don't think it should be.
I don't think it should be because
I guess the only reason I'm saying that is I don't know if I buy that the Punisher would sympathize with him as much as he does at the end, and he's supposed to.
Well, I think that's because that's a revelation moment for the Punisher.
Okay.
Where so here, oh hell, Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Because I think that's all they.
John Pilgrim. Just a real on-the-nose kind of name, right?
Which, I mean, if you think about it, he changed his name because he was effectively in witness protection.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
He chose the name,
yeah,
and he was...
so I guess I can't make fun of it as much as I want to.
Well, you can call him Dorky, but... but it's the character's name, which makes sense to me, because when a person takes on a huge ideology, it makes sense to me that he would choose a name that is born out of
might as well call him David Quaker, you know, like
he really enjoys oats. So what I like about this guy is that the Punisher is essentially fighting this just evil entity that's coming at him like a storm. You know, the Punisher is a force. This former mafioso is a force, and these two storms clash. These two storms clash, and then the Punisher realizes, oh, you have a family that's this is the reason why you're doing this. But up until, or not very far away from that moment, is when the guy himself has the realization that his kids are in danger.
Yeah.
So when he figures out that his wife died and they lied to him that his wife was still alive, long enough for them to come up and essentially give him more instructions while telling him that his wife is actually dead. Like, we wanted you to stay focused. Well, what an evil entity. They just lied to you.
Yeah, and suddenly it all becomes real to him and he realizes, oh, we weren't like doing God's work or whatever. And then I guess he has that in common with their son, where it's like they both have this realization, like, oh, these people are not who we thought they were. And I really feel bad for the senator guy at the end when he finds out that his parents are just like two-dimensional mustache twirling villains. It's like, oh wow, they are just total monsters, and you never realized it.
I like that. I mean, obviously, if you watch it, the insinuation is that he's this conservative senator.
Yeah.
And I like that they say in there, I think he has some good ideas, and we're essentially trying to divorce him from the thing that is corrupting his ability to govern.
Yeah.
And so they're not necessarily coming down one way or another on any political party, but rather saying that being beholden to big business is the problem.
Yeah.
And having the interweaving of
your constituents should be the people and not corporations. Yeah.
Right. So therefore, even if we think about it, so they use what's in the news, and they say that somebody's trying to blackmail this person into doing what they want him to do. However, the bigger problem, because that guy, he's dead and it's over. The corporation is essentially telling him, and he doesn't necessarily realize that there's no blackmailing that needs to happen. He is just stuck. He does what mommy and daddy tell him to do, and I think maybe that's a little on the nose to make the corporate entity his parents rather than somebody who just pays for him, but because that would be more realistic. But because essentially you have authority figures within his personal life that tell him what to do. And I like that he comes to this realization, and that this brutal figure brings him along to do it.
But no, that still works because you're talking about like modern day family empires, and like we have that with business and politics, and those combine all the time. And
money can be institutional, and I like the idea of empire. I like the idea that I mean, I don't mean that to sound like I like the idea, but within the show.
Yeah.
So I like that we have this generational wealth, that there is an aristocracy within a nation, and it's not necessarily the governing bodies. And the governing bodies themselves are not necessarily the people who are in office. It's the people who tell the people who are in office what to do. And
well, that's what I'm saying is that if part of the point they're making is like, don't just be scared of oppressive government, like you know, oppressive business can be the same thing, then it makes sense that if you have business driving government, then it would make sense that they would be able to so easily just put someone in.
So this is the thing that I find interesting, where it can't just be so the guy is a homosexual. He's closeted because his parents tell him to be closeted. He's closeted because
I actually totally forgot about that.
I forgot about it until just this moment. Actually,
when you started saying that, I was like, "Is this a hypothetical?" Oh no,
it was in there.
It was in there. Right.
It was the entire reason that they were blackmailing him. So
yes, I forgot about that.
He's closeted because not only because his parents tell him to do it, but he's essentially conned into doing it because his constituents would be the ones that he's pandering to anyway, would have a problem with him being, and they even say it in the show, right, where they would have a problem with him being gay, or they would have a problem with him having lied about not being gay. Saying that he's not, lying that he is.
Right.
You know what I mean. So and I like that it's not just cut and dry, and that's why I say that they're not necessarily coming down on a particular political ideology, but rather allowing it to be more complex, more nuanced. You can have one thing. You don't have to be a card-carrying this. You can have nuanced opinions. I can support this and not support this, and then vice versa. So
and I also think that this season, by and large, you can watch on a couple of levels, which I always appreciate with political fiction. So you can be taken in by the character drama and not focus on that stuff, and it can still be about as escapist as you want it to be.
Right. And I didn't feel like they hammered anything too hard home. I think you're right.
I don't think so, too. I think that ultimately works okay. My biggest issue is just boring stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
It did seem like there was a lot of
all of that comes together really, really good at the end. But you're right. I wish somehow, at least maybe thematically, we were connecting that up a little bit more with the Rousseau stuff, and I realize that you touched on a couple of things, but it doesn't completely gel.
Yeah, these two things are disjointed, and that's the big problem.
But I wouldn't have as much of a problem with that if it was like 2 half seasons. It's just that it all ends at the same time. You know what I mean? That is better if we hand one off. But yeah, so let's talk about Billy a little bit more.
We could have brought him back to New York because of the thing, and then we could have done we literally could have you could have stopped it at episode 6. Corporate espionage is over. Oh look, Billy's awake.
Because when they make a big deal at the end of the season at the end of last season that Billy has gotten jigsawed and he's in the hospital, wouldn't it have been kind of fun if it's like episodes before we mention him again, where it's just like, where is he? What does he do? Oh, there he is, and he's doing stuff. And it's just really dull to have to.
He's doing stuff.
Unless I'm really intrigued and compelled by the identity stuff with him, which I'm not, because it's hard to play fair with your audience with this. You got to make it really clear what you're doing, because and this ultimately was actually kind of my problem with, because like you said, by the end he seems like just a crazy person, where it's like, is he even the same person, or is he like a broken shell of a man who's kind of putting together a new identity? Like, have you seen Alita Battle Angel yet?
I've not.
It's,
I heard it was boring.
I won't. I loved it,
Oh,
but
good.
I won't give away too much with that, except to say that that's an amnesia situation where you're seeing a person who is sort of figuring out who she used to be, but mostly starting kind of from infancy, almost as if you were reincarnated or something, right? And putting together like a new person from an old person. The Rousseau thing doesn't really do that. It's more like we just sit around a long time until let him know everything we want him to know. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of a Spawn problem.
I suppose you could say that his aggression and his need to manipulate would have been born out of the person who he was. He's just forgotten the details. But then again, it sounds like he was that person to begin with. That he was easily corruptible because he was selfish and because he was looking for more of a payoff rather than being interested in the people in his life. So I don't know. I dislike.
Well, and I don't know how much I'm supposed to care about or sympathize with him, because I know all the horrible things he did last season, and like again, it doesn't. I don't mean to talk in circles, but it doesn't feel like we're watching.
The show goes in circles.
It doesn't feel like we're watching the other side of the coin with Rousseau, where like he's causing all these horrible things for the Punisher, and we're seeing like his machinations and what exactly he's doing. It feels like, or even that we're watching like what feels like a parallel protagonist or like a dual protagonist who then becomes the antagonist. It doesn't feel like that either. It just feels like it can't. It's treating him as if he is a protagonist, but we know he's not. Mm-hmm. And like I'm supposed to like. With all of his, nightmares about the Punisher and stuff, like, am I supposed to feel bad for him? Am I supposed to care about that? Why am I watching those scenes?
There's so many. I feel like, and now maybe
is it supposed to be a character study? Because I'm not compelled by it.
Well, maybe it is supposed to be a character study, Billy, but I don't feel like it is. It's pretty shallow.
That's what I think.
I think the character study is really more about the veterans with whom he interacts.
And we need to talk about the scar issue.
It's not that bad.
The scar tissue. Because yeah, it's.
My wife said that too. We were sitting there watching this. She was like, "Why is that guy making fun of him? His scars aren't that bad."
Yeah.
Now, granted, I've met some pretty disgusting individuals who would make fun of somebody for the least, like, for the tiniest minute thing that they have with them that makes them different.
It's not just that he gets made fun of, though. People keep talking about him the whole way through, like he's. He's got the monstrous visage that we expected to see him have. But here's what's really weird about it, because at first it feels like laziness, and then it feels like they can't decide what it is, because he got skin grafts. It's not like the Two-Face thing with Dark Knight, right? Like, he did get surgery to make it better, and it's almost... Didn't he? And so it's almost as if...
I mean, he got surgery to put his face back together, so it's weird to me that it looks as good as it does, since he had his whole face dragged into the...
See, I was going to say that it's weirdly almost too realistic, even though they keep talking about it like it's way worse than it is, because it's like... In our modern day, he might have been able to get surgery to look as good as he does, or close to as good as he does. So it's almost like there's... Right. I don't feel like... I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I don't feel like they did it because they're being lazy and the actor doesn't want to wear the makeup. Although it feels like that toward the beginning. But I don't think that's what it is. I feel like they're going, if we make it crazy, it's going to look too comic book and nobody's going to buy it.
Yeah, that was one of the problems.
So I think they overcompensate too much with that, and then they have people talk about it like it's... like.
Because Jigsaw and Warzone looked like it was prosthetics.
Right.
It was poofy, it moved weird, and I'm like, well, why not just put giant scars across?
Sure.
Like, why not just make a few? Or instead of just doing a few, just make it not quite so hamburger.
Yeah.
Make it more distinct cuts, but make it significant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why they didn't do that, but then again, maybe they thought that the... What's-her-face? Wow. The psychologist wouldn't be able to really sympathize with somebody who wasn't somehow beautiful. But
it's just a big mistake. Yeah. And also her backstory was not as interesting as they thought it was. like some things come too late where they treat them like big giant reveals. I spend the whole
that should
show
have been way at the beginning.
yeah, because I spend the whole show wondering how she is damaged enough that she's falling in love with this guy, and then when we find it, the payoff is not great.
And I don't really think that her dad and Billy are that much alike.
I didn't think so either. I was like, how is this really a parallel? But anyway, what I was going to say about the makeup is,
Okay.
it is a mistake unless you're, and this is why it was so weird. Unless this is the point you're making, but then with everyone acting like horrified at his visage, it wasn't, okay? He's got the skull face that he has to draw on.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked that as an art project, especially
He should
where he's
be a
like,
graphics designer.
where he's like, I don't want to do arts and crafts, and she's like, do arts and crafts. He's like, okay, fine, and he finally does the skeleton face. But I think it's weird. Like, I think this was a mistake, right? That he's got that mask on for as long as he does. I also thought it was kind of weird that we had to get that non-linear, where it's like we're wondering why he's wearing that mask, and they give us the flashback, and I'm like, oh, okay, so now I know, but I don't know why it was hidden from me before. Like, I think it was just so that they could have the reveal of he takes his mask off, and either it's not as bad as you thought it was, or oh my god, I'm not sure which it was supposed to be. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What is the reveal when the mask gets taken off?
What I think is that what they should have done is made it very apparent that the only person
Maybe on set it looked way worse than when they got it on camera. They were like, oh no, it's not translating.
perhaps the only person who really should have seen Billy's face as monstrous should have been Billy.
Yeah.
Because
that's a cool idea.
He's a beautiful guy, which is one of the things in the comic books. His name is Billy the Beaut, right?
And he's got like a vanity thing, and
so now granted, I don't think you would be a good psychologist if he would have said, my face is horrible, and then they say, well, it's not that bad, come on. But, because you don't want to negate what somebody says, right? But I feel like you can seed this a little better, where you would say things leading like, why is it that bad to you?
Okay, wouldn't it have almost been better if there was nothing wrong with it? Wouldn't it be better if they fixed it completely and he took his mask off and it was fine?
Yeah.
Or there were like a couple of scratches, but it was clear that was the point they were making, and not this weird, vague, like, how bad is it really?
Yeah.
I was distracted by that the entire time.
The big reveal was, I mean, granted, I saw his face in the one of the cards that they put up there, so it's not like the reveal was particularly shocking, because I'm like, oh, there it is. It's like watching the climax of Barton Fink during the load screen for the DVD.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, what the heck? So we get to know what happens?
DVDs are for people who went to the theater, okay?
Yeah, we don't expect you to buy this just so you can watch it.
No.
Or maybe you rent it or whatever.
No, you should only watch things you've never seen before in the theater or on TV or on Netflix. Okay?
Make my wife load things up and pause it.
We only purchase or rent things out of a red box if we've seen them before, Vince. Everyone knows this. That's all anybody does.
Nobody waits to see it on screen. So nobody's ever said that before.
Yeah, this is not a complaint we've had for 20 years with DVDs.
That stuff annoys me. So they should have...
And we're still doing it.
If they wanted it to be a big reveal, they should have just kept the Jigsaw face mask. But,
yeah,
why would you choose that? So when they reveal it,
I feel like there's a weird miscommunication going on there. I don't know what they think they're saying to the audience, but...
it's almost like one group of people is set to do something dramatic, and the other group of people is set to do something completely separate. Here, I want you to write a dramatic story about Galactus. Now, the person who gets to describe it is the one who's writing those like Fisher-Price things, you know, where he walks around
looking for tasty planets to eat.
So,
I can't believe you remember that. That's hilarious.
I think about that every so often.
It's really funny.
Tasty planets, and the people on there are like, "We're frosting," but that's not actually
we're
description.
We're surprisingly already at an hour, and I wasn't sure we would have enough material for even half an hour because I didn't remember. I wasn't sure how much of this would come back to me. But this is Punisher. You care about a lot about the Punisher. It's not surprising that so much came back to you. I want to mention a couple other things really quick. I am, and you may not have this, but I'm surprised I'm saying this, but one of this is a big positive. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was just performance or having Punisher interacting with someone the whole season that he came to actually like, because he comes to respect Jigsaw, but I don't feel like they're like really friends. I mean they are, but like there's always, for a long time, there's animosity, and he doesn't trust him, right?
That's an interesting way to put it. I don't think that he respects him. I don't think he likes him.
Oh,
I think
okay.
I think once it is obvious that Punisher and Billy or that Frank.
Oh no,
Castle
I'm sorry,
Billy,
I said the right. I meant Microchip from the first season. I
okay, yeah,
I was
go ahead.
just the guy he's palling around with in the first season. Like,
yeah, he does come
like,
to respect
it is-
Microchip.
It is really it is really nice that, I mean, even though he ties her up in a hotel room in the second episode, it's really nice that eventually he comes to really care about this girl and has almost like a father-daughter relationship with her. I like the Punisher Amy relationship a lot. I thought she was going to be really tedious and grate on me, and there were places where she did, but ultimately I liked that a lot. I thought it was great. That actress was wonderful, and I will admit to actually in the scene in the train station, or in the bus station at the end, I teared up a little bit. I thought that was a great scene.
And I like that the Punisher can't deal with his emotions, so he books it.
Yes, so he just gets up and leaves. I think I liked the Punisher more this season, like as a person. Like I think I enjoyed watching him more than I did the first season.
Like I think some folks might argue that it's a
and then that makes the ending a little bit more tragic.
Yeah,
because I'm seeing more of his human side. I see more flashes this season of what he might have been like with his family. Yes. And I really, really like that. Even as at the same time he's got his my way or the highway attitude, and he's making it and he's setting people up for failure. Where what's his friend's name who helped? I always forget that guy's name. Who
oh man, the dude with the fake
who
leg.
runs the group? Yeah, with the fake leg. But he and Amy are. They meet by her accidentally shooting him. That is the Punisher's fault. The Punisher totally made that happen. But even despite that, despite how right they are, that it is just his world and they're living in it, I see more flashes of humanity, and he's got Bernthal has a really unique sense of humor for the Punisher. And there's a lot of excellent levity in this. That's like real subtle and fits with it. Never feels like we're going to like a super jokey place. But I don't know. I like him more this time.
I can see that, and I like that. Like all of the fatherly stuff, all of the human stuff for the Punisher in the previous season was effectively strictly with Microchip's family, and even then it was still like you weren't sure exactly how this man could possibly do that. And all of the stuff...
And there were places where it was hard to tell how much that was a front.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, which I think was part of the point in the first season, is that he was questioning whether or not this was a thing that he himself either should do or should be allowed to do or is capable of, because, I mean, being that good of a killer is the thing that essentially keeps him from reintegrating into society. And which is also itself a veteran's issue. You train somebody to kill, you train somebody to shut off certain emotional parts of their brain, and then you ask them to just show back up into society at some point and say, go forth and be a part. And then you say, well, but I've been trained to do this other thing that is really impractical.
Yeah.
For
you transformed me, I can't turn it off.
And which is a thing I hear people saying, like, I have this issue. So,
and this season wasn't as much about PTSD as the first season. Like, that's the main thing that first season is about.
Right.
But I like that we haven't forgotten it. That's still there, and it's still an issue.
Yes.
And we give...
Which is essentially how
the guy with
Billy manipulates all
fake leg that I can't remember his name, a lot more to do this season.
I can't remember his name to save it.
And I like that he's kind of... Like, what did you think of how much more screen time he had and how he was integrated in the story this season?
I liked him a lot. I felt like Group got a little ignored. Now, granted, they said that essentially he had to ignore them, which is maybe how, maybe that's representative of something. Maybe I hadn't thought of that until just now, but maybe it's representative of the reason why some people can be manipulated or don't have enough help, is that essentially we are taking away the help that people have, and then they look for it maybe in the worst spot available. They succumb to the darker thoughts within their minds. So if you have PTSD, this PTSD directs how your thoughts work. Now I don't know what I'm talking about. Curtis!
God,
how could I forget Curtis?
Is he a comic character?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay.
I said, how could I forget Curtis because I'm a Blues Brothers fan. Curtis.
Oh, okay.
So Curtis is a name that sticks out in my head. But I liked that. I like that he essentially, he's a good sniper, and I like that he has to come to terms with what he did. A person who tries, and he's a medic, and he tries to save life, but he's fully capable of taking it.
That's a good point. And that he's forced back in all this in the first place, right? Because he thought he'd never be in this place again. And
which I think is why
Punisher
he's
puts
like,
him between a rock and a hard place.
I think it was always evident between first season and second season, is that Curtis is always just a little afraid of the Punisher. Not necessarily like Punisher's going to hurt me, but rather this is a life that I do not want to be a part of.
Yeah, he's going to put me back in that mode again.
And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
And I like.
And it was just nice to get to see that guy do some action stuff, because you got the sense in the first season like he's capable of that stuff, and he probably wants to do that. And then, I mean, that actor was really excited this season, like, oh cool, I got to do the action stuff.
And you know, he's a handicapped fella. Which I mean, he's missing a leg, so we get to see all aspects of this, where we have these things that are essentially kept under wraps, and when we have this guy who thinks like all of that stuff's behind me. I've lost my leg. I'm completely out of it. I'm what is he, a social worker? Is that right?
Well, that's such a good point. There's a physical part of me I left behind.
Like everything, this whole life, it took something from me, and it's no longer a part of me.
Yeah.
And now we have him having to realize that the thing that keeps him in it is not necessarily his previous life, but rather the people that he surrounds himself with. And he's never necessarily far removed from violence. So now I'm just spitballing.
No, that's you're totally right. Absolutely.
I find that I found Curtis fascinating. I like that the Punisher had people near him that didn't want to be part of this, and the Punisher, I don't know that he wants to be part of it or not. I think that was always kind of the issue, is that he does, and the idea that he thought he could walk away from it at the end of the first season was almost laughable, because I'm like, no, you can't.
Yeah, but I don't think it was wrong of the show to try to put him in that place.
Yeah, maybe not.
I mean, I really don't. Now, some of that is my bias toward the first episode of the season, because just it in isolation, and forgetting how easy it is that, like you say, because I totally agree with you, that running into Amy, and as big of a conspiracy as he's landed in is really easy. Forgetting that part of it, that is one of my favorite hours of television that Marvel Netflix has produced. Just atmospherically, and like the music in that episode worked with what it was trying to accomplish so well. And I just felt like, again, I felt like the Punisher, Frank himself was, as a character, was almost being like reintroduced, not reinvented, but like almost introduced to us for the first time. It's like, these are the things this guy, if he allowed himself to be a person, would be interested in. This is what he's like. This is Frank the human being. And like,
I like that he has such eclectic taste in music as well, because at some point they show him
he legitimately wanted to keep watching that concert. And
he's enjoying the country that's at the concert, but then later he's listening to rock and roll, and I'm like, huh.
He's just got an eclectic assortment. Yeah,
he's an interesting person.
I was surprised, and maybe you don't agree with this, maybe you don't have this, but like
rock and roll.
I was surprised that I bought his relationship with that girl moving as fast as it did, because I liked it a lot. I thought it was great, and I bought that when she got shot, he would do what he did. I thought it was weird that we never go back to her. Like, I realized we go to New York, but she didn't get killed, and it's just weird that she never. Like, I thought maybe the very end he would come back and say something to her and be like, and be like, you know, I have to go back to my old life again. Like,
I guess that's why those first 2 episodes are really completely disjointed in my head. Like, this is a separate thing, because.
And I wanted more of that season. Is the thing.
The thing that I watch that, and my thought becomes, is it something that's actually worth doing? Because I feel like we already tread that ground. But then, I mean, your point makes sense. I don't know where I'm going with this.
You just thought it was redundant? In what way? Just.
I mean, I feel like the first season essentially answers that question for him, and then he has to answer it to him himself again within 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And so it's almost representative.
But I don't think he answers it for himself in those episodes. I think that, at least, again, we broke down at the beginning of this what the season was trying to accomplish, and I don't think we've ever landed on how well it actually accomplished it, right? But, like, the whole season, he's going back and he's waffling on whether he has to be the killing machine or not. Like, can I be a human being? And
I suppose maybe there's a difference between do I have to be the killing machine, or which the first season would be asking, can I accept that the killing machine is a part of me?
Right.
So maybe that's essentially where I'm getting hung up. Now, maybe the girl never coming back is representative. I'm not necessarily saying that this was intentional, but the
I
girl...
was just surprised not to see her again. I kind of thought we would.
Yeah, I thought so as well. I mean, you see her again because Pilgrim comes in and threatens her.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, never mind.
But,
You know what? I thought she was written out of the show entirely. She wasn't. But we never see Punisher with her again, right?
Right. So that's the last time that she's in the show.
Okay.
So she comes back, but I think that might even be in the same second episode or the beginning of the third.
In another watch, if I were to watch these two seasons together, I might have what you have, where it feels like a double beat, where it's like, well, no, you already went through this arc, and now you're but. And maybe they just need to bring more to the fore. Like he gets that, but he's trying, against all odds. He's hoping he's wrong about it.
I feel like I don't know that I can get over it myself, but I do think that you're presenting a compelling case that these are two separate issues. Now maybe it's representative,
and I'm saying he's trying. At the beginning, he's not trying really hard. He stumbles into it. He's just traveling. Now he's not going around trying to find bad people and kill them. He's just trying to lay low. But you think he should? Okay.
That's what I think should be the issue, because I thought in my mind that he accepted this part of him, and he knows that it's always going to be there.
Is it supposed to be something about? You know what I think they think they're doing? We'll have to decide if they're actually doing the thing we think they're doing, or the thing I think they're doing.
We're not going to have a season 3 to confirm.
That's true, and that's the last thing I wanted to talk to you about. But let me ask you this: do you think maybe the idea is supposed to be that he more or less came to terms with that, except he left Billy alive? Because we haven't even really talked about the whole thing about how he feels responsible because he should have killed him and he didn't, and Billy wouldn't be able to do the things he was doing, obviously, if Punisher had done what he usually would do, but he had feelings for the man, so he left him alive. And then there's that whole question throughout the season of, is he any different than his villains? I just want to throw that out real quick and tack it on, because we didn't talk about that, but that's also a real big thrust of the season. We didn't talk about that at all.
I found that, it was a little melodramatic.
It's the obvious...
But I do...
They did it in kind of an obvious way, I thought, but...
Barenthal's performance, I think, was solid when it came to how would the Punisher act. So that cop comes in to kill him, and he's just here, and I'm like, that's fast.
There is a real good speech with Curtis about why he's different from Jigsaw, right?
Oh, Karen Page as well.
Oh yeah,
because they're like, because what's her face, the psychologist is essentially presenting the idea to Madani that Punisher and Billy are the same person, and Madani has a terrific explanation for why Punisher and Billy are not the same person. That the thing that would destroy, and granted, that's what creates this whole scheme for Billy and how to destroy the Punisher is to convince him that he killed someone.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that whole thing. That was a good setup, actually. I like that a lot.
And I think the relationship between Madani and, you know what, I wonder if some of this stuff isn't there's so much airspace is because they're trying to make it feel more natural that piece of information would have gone from Madani to the psychologist to Billy to...
Well, and I'm not giving it enough credit for all the things it's actually getting accomplished, because there's this whole section we forgot to talk about, and that stuff is actually pretty good.
There's a lot of interesting things.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you buy... it's a lot of it's pacing issue, right? Let me ask you this. Do you buy that the plan? I think this works for the most part, but I'm just curious to know what you think. That Frank pretty much shuts down, and I like this. He's done with life. He's ready for somebody to just come by and shoot him in the head when he thinks that he's killed innocent people. Do you buy that once he finds out that they didn't die, that he kind of just flips right back to where he was before. Because, yeah, the whole thing was a setup. But I wonder if he shouldn't be at least thinking, like, okay, but what if that had happened, or isn't it really possible for me to, like, accidentally kill someone? And then, because, like, his motivations didn't matter to him. It was like he didn't mean to do that, but the fact that he did, like, you'd think that he would be maybe. See, I said I thought it worked for the. Now I'm wondering about it.
Yeah, I mean, and you see how much he freaks out. Going back to actually something we were touching upon earlier.
Wouldn't you think maybe you need to change your MO to some degree?
Yeah. Granted, like, I think that's what was so interesting about Microchip and the Punisher together in the first season, being that
he held him back.
Microchip was able to direct him, like, because of all the technology. He was essentially not only telling him how to live, but how to hit the targets with least amount of collateral damage. And then you look at
here is a loose cannon.
Yeah, but is he a loose cannon? I mean, he's
well, not.
He puts himself in situations in which he knows that everyone in there is maybe worth killing.
Yeah.
Which I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but or at least within his ideology, that everybody in there is guilty.
They probably deserve to die. Yeah.
So,
he's not going to feel bad about it.
And but then again, is it possible? Now that's the thing that's always plagued me about the Punisher, is that sure, the answer that he's just that good is like saying, well, do we need to explain how Batman got back into the city?
Or the fact that, or the exact same thing with Batman. The fact that Batman doesn't kill, he also never accidentally kills, because that would just be too complicated in his brain, you know. So he never has that moment where, like, where, you know, he throws a batarang and it hits a little kid in the head and he falls off a roof, and I don't know what the kid's doing on the roof, but
or why he's catching batarangs with his head.
We very rarely do that story, because he just gets lucky and nobody ever actually dies, like, indirectly or otherwise responsible.
So when it comes to the Punisher, there's one story arc of the Punisher in the comics that addresses this issue, essentially.
Okay.
And it basically insinuates that there is not necessarily a love affair, but there is an affinity that Death has for the Punisher. That the Grim Reaper is on the side of the Punisher. So whether the Punisher realizes it or not.
We're talking the Thanos death?
No.
Oh.
We're talking Punisher Born.
Because I'd love to see that.
And
I'd love to see how Death feels about Punisher. Right?
So it's insinuated. It's not like straight up, but and maybe I'm recalling it being more encrypted than it was. But I'll let you borrow Born, because it's effectively the Punisher origin before the Punisher.
Okay.
So the thing that awoke the monster within the man before the thing that unleashed it upon the gangs of New York. So there is a moment earlier in the show that. Well, earlier than what? I don't know. There's a moment within the show where he's having this teaching moment with the girl, Amy. And so he teaches her how to take the gun. And I'm like, this stuff's...
The payoff for that is great.
Exactly.
It's great.
So when we have her thinking she can ambush this man, she's getting very familiar with him. So she thinks, well, Punisher wouldn't actually hurt me. But she's forgetting that this isn't a game. That there's... Well, not necessarily that the whole thing's not a game, but that the Punisher is a dangerous man.
Yeah.
And the entire way that he's interacting with her is based on self-protection and how to deal with danger.
And then she suddenly gets why, to some degree, why he is the way he is, and why he told her, when you grab the gun, even though he's unarmed, you fire immediately. And she does that.
Which, that was fascinating.
It's great.
So,
and the way she's rattled the rest of the episode, like, it's excellent.
You know, and that's
I thought she was good. That was the moment where this actress is great.
Yes. And that's fascinating because it goes back to, now, I'm sorry if you haven't seen Unforgiven, but this is something that these movies share, where I'm like, this is a moment where people understand that...
That's an okay Metallica song, but I like Unforgiven 2 a little bit better.
I've not seen that Clint Eastwood movie. But, so here's this boy.
Nah.
So, spoilers for Unforgiven, but if you haven't seen it, for the love of God, go see it.
Okay.
It goes like it's in a theater. Go rent it from the library, because it's available. But, so here's this boy.
Just don't watch the DVD menus, because it'll give away everything.
We have these movies where... Yes. Where...
Skip that part.
We have these movies where killing and murder is just part of the movie. And they're like, well, that's all self-protection. People are going to be okay with that. But, like, we forget that there is evidence that a lot of folks who go to war don't actually shoot at the enemy. They shoot up. They shoot above the heads. They don't want to kill anybody.
Interesting.
So when we're looking at things like this, here's a man who is very good at killing people and does so because he has an ideology that allows him to do it. And then you look at this girl who suddenly realizes that her life is on the line. It's her or him, and she chooses her. Which, I mean, makes
also sense. A really wholesome girl who refuses to swear. I think that's important.
It is pretty cute.
Yeah, but I also think it's important that she gets from that to shoot the guy after you take his gun. That they did that on purpose.
What's interesting is that she doesn't swear. At least I don't recall her swearing much, and she intentionally uses non-swear words. But
yeah, no, it's a plot point that she doesn't swear.
She also has this like very antagonistic, insulting relationship with the people around her.
Yeah.
It's like she's intentionally mean to the Punisher
when
she needs him.
She's a grifter that doesn't swear, right? Like, she's got this really wholesome personality, but she also goes under a pseudonym, and...
It's a terrific point. If you really think about the... so you have these people who should be really wholesome because they're very religious. Now, this isn't necessarily to crap on people who are religious, but... so you have an ideology given to you by your religion that you ignore, not necessarily all religious people, but the corporate entities within the show, that they ignore because it's not the thing that's important to them. The thing that's important to them is the money that they're making. However, here's this girl who's trying to figure out how to get by in life, who is essentially a wholesome character, but she
does little con jobs.
These entities within her life that force her to do things that are wrong in order to survive, as opposed to people who choose to do things that are wrong in order to.
So like her heart's in the right place. She doesn't do it because she likes it. She does it because she has to. And then there's the inherent parallel with the Punisher, where it's like how much of it does he like doing, and how much of it is he feels like he has to.
Yeah, and this is an argument that I hear from a lot of people when talking about real life, where I hear things.
A lot of this is getting better as we're talking about it, right?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it more in my head. I hate the fact that these two stories are disjointed from each other.
And I want to lose all of the Madani and Jigsaw stuff. Like,
yeah, I don't mind. I loved Madani in the first season.
Me too.
And Madani in the second season, I feel like could have been a more, cohesive plot point. I feel like the function of Madani.
I feel like they don't know how to write Shattered Madani, right? Like,
yeah,
her and Jigsaw both. It's like we just don't know what to do with these characters after.
I kept wondering, how are you still in the position that you're in long enough to resign? Like, how did you not get fired? Or how did you not get radically demoted?
You know what I really like, though? I like her relationship with Mahoney and how he doesn't give her an inch. And I like how much we've done with him now. I wanted to make sure that he got brought up. So he's in this this universe from the very beginning, the first season Daredevil. You remember that? He's
I kept having to remind myself that that's the same guy.
It's the same guy, and he's in like the first the second or third scene of the first episode of Daredevil. He's there from the very beginning. That's the guy that Foggy Nelson bribes by giving his mother cigars. And now he's like the major cop character this season, and I like how he tries to do everything totally by the letter, and then he's the guy that learns that things aren't so black and white, and that by the end he's forced to work with the Punisher, and he never goes too far. Like, he tries not to give him an inch, and he has to compromise, but he's always really, really, really uncomfortable with it, which is, if you go all the way back to first season Daredevil, this is all extremely consistent with his characterization. It's great. And one of my favorite episodes this season is, partly just because it's so thrilling, is when they're stuck in the ambulance together. And that stunt is awesome.
You know, there are some really good, like, I feel like overall there are some good ideas, but as a whole piece, it's not cohesive, and there's a lot of problems. But then when you look at individual episodes, there are some individual episodes that are killer.
Yeah.
And no pun intended. And then you look at like the assault on Precinct Punisher was fascinating.
Yep.
And the escape in the Punisher ambulance was fascinating.
It's really good.
And the whole fight, the whole episode where we have the Pilgrim who has realized who he is, and the Punisher who is still struggling to get a grip on the situation, coming together for a larger fight. Now is fascinating. Not just how brutal the fight is. I mean, I still love how Punisher can get a butt kick and still.
Yeah.
And I even like that show or that scene where the Punisher and Billy are walking through that the Marines hitting each other, which I thought, boy, that is not a thing I would do. but it is very telling.
Thing.
Like
it is, yeah.
Don't be afraid to get hit.
It almost felt like a scene we should have had last season.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That flashback. Okay, last big question, and I cannot believe we've gone this long after the preamble we gave of we don't know if we have anything to say. So after finally seeing the season and seeing where Punisher is at the end of it, how disappointed are you that we're not getting any more of this, or are we left in? Because for me, I don't know that I need more in this universe really. With him.
I mean, technically, we could go with any Punisher that fights the mob, and it would be this.
Daredevil, I could have really used a 4th season. Punisher, I don't know that I need any more after that. I mean, like they kind of give you like the quintessential Punisher scene at the end of that. And I'm not saying there's nothing else to do or say with that character. If they can't figure out how to do more compelling villains, I'm really happy we're not getting any more. That's just how I feel about it. But I didn't feel let down that it was going to be. That we weren't going to get any more. I don't know about you.
The thing, I'm a little let down because I don't really feel like we got what the Punisher is supposed to be. That a person who seeks out and defeats the entities in which he decides he's going after. And I do feel like the Punisher has a distinct upward curve on the level of crime that he handles. So we have these street level gangs, mobs, mafiosos that the Punisher has taken care of. And then eventually he works himself up to what is effectively not just street level, but connected to street level. We have the corporate crime, which would be i.e. Kingpin and things and guys of the ilk. So we are moving from, in the comic books, the guys who killed his family, which would be not the CIA in the comic books.
Yeah,
it would be the mob, and then they move up the ladder.
Madani just joins the mob.
Come on and join the mob. Like, well, they're not the ones that killed my family, so that's respectable.
Wow, you turned into a crazy person.
Which I really feel like it's really not that much different. Like, you just joined the player. That's the joke you're making, and then I wanted to explain it.
So, no, that's all right. Jokes are always funnier when you explain them.
That's right. That's what they tell me. Because they have to explain it.
So, do you feel like this is sort of that, like, prequel reimagining problem we get a lot? Where you
jam everything together.
No. Where you start a character from well before where the status quo we're used to with them. We have like a real iconic character that we've dealt with a lot. You see this in a lot of stuff. The new James Bond movies were like this. The Abrams Star Trek was like this. Abrams Star Trek. You've seen at least that first movie. Abrams Star Trek.
I've seen all 3.
09. I love Beyond so much; it's so good. But 09 gets Kirk in the captain's chair, and then the second movie gets us in the very last scene to the beginning of the 5-year mission, which is what TOS is, right? You see this with a lot of things, like the James Bond movies, like the end of the second movie, he finally feels more or less like what Bond is going to be like, and then they do like the music sting that you usually get with him. Do you feel like that a little bit with Punisher, and that's kind of the frustration is that we got 2 seasons of sort of getting him to the play, especially with that last scene here, where like, okay, he is doing that now. He is running off looking for crimes to stop. And so, like, they get that character, and he is that character, but it was kind of prequel territory, and now we're in that status quo, and we're not going to get any more.
Yeah.
Right?
To some extent, I'm like, why?
We do this with if you've never noticed it, go back and look at it. We do this with reboots all the time.
The whole story is to get you to the place where, and then you can start telling the old stories again.
Yeah. Or you never really get to that.
It drove me nuts when the last scene. Now, granted, I didn't like that he announced himself to the guys. Like, he didn't announce himself to Billy. He just walked in there and shot him. But I mean, granted,
this is just in a really good mood.
Hi there. Hello, everybody. Catch. But I dislike that we get to that moment, and then it seems like he's just made this choice. Well, I'm going to continue killing, and I'm going to continue punishing, and where, like, well, shouldn't that have essentially been where you started? Like, the thing that got you into this is you went through a series of events that put you into a world where you're like, more people from this world need to be punished. But you have just decided that the people from this world that you're going to punish are the gangs of New York. But the people you have been fighting, with the exception of having a loose connection to the mob, to the Russian mob in New York, that loose connection, you're really fighting a corporation. You're fighting the connection to the government. You're fighting international espionage via corporate espionage. Mm-hmm. You're fighting the CIA. You're embroiled with other intelligence communities. I'm like, so why are you deciding, like, where's the connection, other than the mob was involved at some point? But the mob is small potatoes. Why are you fighting the mob? If you're like this, why aren't you joining?
Are you talking about just in that last scene?
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious answer to that is, again, they just want to make it look quintessential. We're used to seeing Punisher mow down mobs in the comics, and they think that now we've gotten him to I'm telling you, it's that prequel reimagining thing.
What I'm saying is...
they're not thinking about story in that scene.
I'm essentially supporting your point.
Yeah.
Is that it's driving me nuts that they just decide
yeah.
that the Punisher is going to be quintessential Punisher at the end. And I'm like, well, if the entire thing was building up to that moment to where the Punisher becomes quintessential Punisher, I get it. But the entire thing was not building up to that moment.
But, like, would you feel better about it if he was just fighting somebody else? Like, was the problem just who he's fighting?
I think yeah.
Okay.
Because we start at the top of the food chain, and then we're moving down to the bottom of the food chain, because now it makes it seem like the people that the Punisher is fighting are the victims of society. And I'm like, so you're killing people who essentially live in a community with not enough jobs and not enough ways to support themselves, so they join these gangs. Okay. Why? Like, shouldn't you be going after bigger fish than those?
That's it. Okay. Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
It felt really unsatisfying at the end, where I'm like, oh man, I just questioned that choice.
So you wanted that to be like, that scene to be in like a penthouse, or like...
Yeah.
Like somebody's corporate office, or...
Instead of
like that.
Effectively representative of one small gang versus another small gang, because I got the impression that everybody was there. Like, shouldn't we be talking about the leader of the Mafia and the leader of the Russian mob, and all of their guys around questioning, well... Or
like he finds... Because remember, the main villains of the season, besides Jigsaw, ultimately are big corporate head honchos. Like,
right.
He goes and finds, let's say 4 or 5, like, corporate head honchos that he knows are creating the most corruption that there is, right? He does what Batman does in Batman Begins. He goes all the way to the top. And he mows them all down, and then he completely destroys, like, the Dow Jones in 48 hours. Like
no, the question becomes...
the Punisher single-handedly collapses the American economy because he takes bad people out.
You know,
at the top.
Now, granted, I would... Well, that's hilarious. I would argue that is a...
I mostly said that to tell a joke, but I think that's funny.
That's fascinating. Now, that would be very telling of the Punisher's ideology, because he's like, whatever bad things happen from the fallout of punishing bad people...
I don't care.
That's just the product of the system that they put in place. If they die, things are better, even if the world stops. So, now that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
But...
That would have made a good season 3. That could have been a good season 3.
Would that have been effectively altering the direction of the character to make him somebody completely different? Because now we're essentially moving from a person who punishes crime to a person who has to become very savvy with global economics.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So I don't know, but...
So, like, I feel like that's the trajectory of these two Punisher seasons. Like, the first one, it's because he was involved with the CIA, and he killed an innocent man because he was told to do so, and was lied to that man was not innocent.
Yeah.
Now, he has to rectify throughout season 1, am I a decent human being? Well, I'm going to hell anyway. I'm a monster. I kill people. That's what I do. And then you get to this, where he's essentially going after those big fish again. But this is no longer circumstance. This is happenstance. Like, you guys didn't have to make that choice. This could have been 3 seasons down the line. And it would have, I think, made more sense. Because it would make more sense in my mind to start with Billy and he's just keeping tabs on him via Madani. So, and you could have that whole 2 first episodes where maybe it's not necessarily something huge that he's running into, but some local politics thing. And I don't mean political officials. I mean something that's you could have a gang of rednecks. You know, you could have a biker gang that essentially terrorizes a small town, make it very Western-like.
Sure.
And, I mean, it doesn't have to be
Again,
Western.
I was loving that small town stuff. I wish somehow we could have kept it there.
I thought that stuff was interesting. And I kind of thought that's where it was going to go initially, where I was like, okay, so there's going to be a biker gang, or there's going to be a gang of, like, some local supremacist group that the Punisher's going to get embroiled in, and he's or whatever. He's going to essentially end up fighting these guys because they're trying to take down some girl who has some evidence about them. Or they're trying to kill some girl because she's different. And
I don't know if you had this. It took me a while to
new
even
in town.
figure out what exactly she had.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't follow that real well for a while.
And I was like, well, it's obviously pictures of something. And then when
Yeah.
it turned out to be pictures of what would have been deemed by his constituents to be sexual impropriety, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like that's it?
Yeah.
And although I think because of what it was, makes us able to sympathize with the guy so much easier, because they didn't catch him doing anything awful. They caught him doing something because he is who he is. And
No, we were supposed to sympathize with him. He wasn't supposed to have skeletons. So
right. So the only skeleton that he had was
that he lied about a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he did lie about a thing, but other than that.
So I liked that what was being held was something that I could still respect the guy for. The only thing is that he's a victim of his circumstance as well. So therefore, what's interesting is that the only people who are actually villains are the ones that are at the top of the corporate structure. Everyone below is a victim. So
yeah, I mean, the Pilgrim guy, you have to hold him somewhat responsible, but
right,
but yeah,
he still
is a victim
of this
too.
system.
But you can't say that he didn't kill the people he killed.
Right. Well, I mean, then the question becomes. Can a victim still be guilty? And I think the answer in the case of him is yes, but can you, if a person is somebody, like, I feel like the Pilgrim's a great example of a person who is forgivable despite how much horrible stuff they've done, because he tried to divorce himself from it initially and thought that he was joining an entire group of people that were going to support this decision. And then he ends up coming back to it because of this group of people. But he desperately wants to move away from that murderous life. And,
sure, but he still did that stuff.
Right.
And he was still willingly part of, like, kind of a cult and stuff. So, or what sure felt like a cult until we found out what was really going on.
Right.
But anyway. Well, folks, we're going to have to end off here. We're already an hour and a half in, and I imagine we talked longer about this season than we did first season. I'm not sure how long that video was, but...
well, I feel like I just fawned over the first season, and we kind of delved into themes. So we went into themes and problems with this one.
Sure, yeah.
But
I don't know. We both ended up having a lot more to talk about than I thought we would. So yeah, overall, I actually like the season better than I thought I did. But
me too.
It's not.
Until an hour and a half ago, I thought I liked it less than I do now.
Yeah. So, but that happens sometimes when you get into the nitty gritty of the thing. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, folks. Sure appreciate it. I'm gonna have Vince on another video or two here in a little bit. So stick around on Geekvolution here in a few days. You'll see a little bit more of Vince. Look, Vince!
Hey, it's
see
me!
some more Vince, and hopefully Vince will come back soon and review something else with us. Maybe something.
Sure.
Something. I don't know. At some point. Anyway, thanks again for watching, folks. We sure appreciate it. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
Later, everybody.